We put out the question to some of our Facebook fans to say, what would you ask the governor if you had a couple of minutes, since we have a couple of minutes? And one of them talked about why you are a better nominee for Idaho than the other three.
Well, I understand jobs. I understand how the economy works. And if people want in their next president someone who can get this economy working again with good jobs and rising incomes, with jobs for young people as they come out of high school and come out of college, then they want to vote for someone who knows something about the economy, and I do. The other guys running, in the case of Senator Santorum, for instance, he's kind of an economic lightweight. He's not spent time in the real economy, and I think that experience that I've had is something which is distinctive in this race.
You've been talking about the economy a lot recently. I think there's a lot of people around Idaho that have a skepticism of the government, and then even sometimes a skepticism of the corporate cultures, especially given the events of the last couple of years. That skepticism has been underscored. So how, as president, do you balance the need to let the market work as a former venture capitalist, but also have proper regulations so that we don't get into some of the messes that we've had the last couple of years?
Well, government surely has a role to play. Government writes the laws, writes the rules, writes the regulations. You need to have regulations. They just need to be updated, modern, dynamic, keeping up with what's happening in the marketplace. If you have, for instance, the telecommunications regulations that don't take into fact the knowledge that we have cell phones today, why they're not going to be very helpful. So bring them up to date. At the same time, make sure that you're helping small business get started and grow, because small businesses are where we get our new job growth. Small businesses are typically the enterprises that pull us out of recessions. Unfortunately, what the president's done has made it harder for small businesses to get going. So the number of small business startups this year compared to 4 years ago is down 100,000 nationwide. I want to make the best place in the world for entrepreneurs again. So I want to get the federal government's heavy hand out of the private sector, out of business, out of the lives of our citizens, and let people pursue their own dreams.
I think there are a lot of people around here who try to start up their own businesses. So what can they look for by way of getting the government out of the way to maybe make that process a little bit easier, maybe with regard to capital or financing?
Well, one of the things the president's doing that's going to hit small business particularly hard, he's trying to raise the tax on individuals and the businesses that pay taxes as individuals. And about 54% of America's workers work in businesses taxed at the individual tax rate. So he's trying to raise the tax rate to 40%. I'm trying to cut it to 28%, making it easier for small business to get capital, to grow, to hire people. Mine is a policy of creating growth. His is a policy of getting more money for the federal government.
One of the other questions we got on Facebook was about the cost of fuel. So, and I've seen some people post that when Obama took office, the average nationwide was $1.78. Of course, it's a little bit more than that now, and looks to be heading more. What could or what should the president do in regulating energy costs as it relates directly to Americans and gas tanks?
Well, what the president should have done from day one is to take advantage of our energy resources. Of course, he should have said yes to the Keystone Pipeline. Of course, he should have opened up more federal lands and provided more permits for drilling on federal lands. Instead, he's cut federal land licenses in half. He's cut the number of permits and the rate of permits in 1/3. He's made it harder and harder for entrepreneurs that bring oil and gas out of the ground to get those products to the marketplace. He's not helping the situation, he's making it worse. The right course is to take advantage of the energy resources we have to get America energy secure and independent of the oil cartels.
Let's stick with energy. We have a Department of Energy site, the Idaho National Lab. It's a national lab. A lot of people worry about the cost of government and the spending that happens. There have been cuts, which then eventually translates to a couple of weeks ago, the contractor with the Idaho National Lab announced a 185-job layoff. How do you balance cuts to the government while at the same time trying to keep the balance of people losing jobs and losing work?
Well, you have to decide which programs are essential for the future of America, and you invest in those things. Those things that are not critical, you stop doing. I'm going to eliminate a lot of programs, Obamacare being first on my list, but a lot of other things, subsidies for Amtrak, subsidies for PBS, paying money to Planned Parenthood. Those things are just going to end. Basic research and science is critical to our future.
You have thoughts on the Idaho National Lab? It's one of the nuclear research institutions that the country has.
Well, nuclear power is going to be one of the great sources of energy for America down the road. It is already in many parts of the country. And so developing new technologies and ways to, for instance, reprocess spent nuclear fuel, to store nuclear fuel, and to develop more safe and secure nuclear power plants, that's an important mission to get us energy secure. Energy is going to be a big issue over the coming decade. The demands for energy around the world are rising as China and Brazil and Indonesia and India are becoming a larger middle class society. And we're going to have more energy, and nuclear is going to be part of that picture.